I have to admit that I didn't understand the hype behind the fashion in Monster Hunters until I saw someone share some pictures of their in-game hunter, and I was like, okay, so there is a little bit of style to work with within the game, and that inclined me to evaluate what the hype is about around, especially their most recent title, Monster Hunter Wilds, and I was pleasantly surprised. Hola, it's X, and in this video, I'm going to go over the three main pieces of context that helped me get oriented with the hype in regard to the Monster Hunter franchise, particularly Monster Hunter Wilds. Then I'm going to go into my thoughts on the main NPC character outfits and styles, and then I'm going to go over my top favorite armor sets within the game. Quickly going over the context that helped me understand the hype behind the Monster Hunter franchise and series is number one, the number of platinum titles positions that it holds for Capcom, and given the record that the Wilds installment set for units sold in a given month, needless to say, it's going to be entering the top 10 spot very soon. That's obviously a great indication of the market resonance that not only the franchise as a whole has, but this particular installment, and there's very specific mechanic and game feature elements as to why that could be the case. Moving into the innovations that were made within this Wilds installment, a dynamic ecosystem with seasonal fluctuations that influence monster behavior. There's like a mount system, there's a focus mode where there's greater targetability, there's like the grand hub that's going to come soon, in addition to cross-platform play. So just so many great enhancements that is setting an amazing foundation for ongoing community and immersive gameplay experience for fans of the franchise. And then lastly, obviously I care about the fashion and the style components. And so with the layered armored system, that has enabled so much more mixing and matching of various armor sets in order to really ladder up to this whole fashion hunters concept that a lot of people have established within the community. And there's a gender neutral armor set situation, so to speak, where instead of the armor sets being gender locked, you can embody both sets of the armor variations, which I feel like just adds so much more variety and diversity to the style experiences that players can experiment with. Now moving into looking at these NPC character outfits, starting with Alma. Her and Eric have this like oversized comfy jacket, which just feels so current and very practical, as well as just kind of exhibits more of a laid back kind of chill and I think maybe introspective type character, which is naturally what Alma is, more scientific, more studious, especially just being given that she's like the quest giver type person. But I obviously love Gemma's style because we're getting some incredible body confidence, but the top is just actually really cute. We obviously have a cropped jacket, but then like a cropped little button top just feels so regular and so everyday. And then of course the bottom of the outfit is really giving that like that Smithy vibe and kind of orientation per her role and function. Loving the boots and the oversized belt and utility pouch details. And I think I'm the biggest fan of the tall messy pony. With regard to Nata, I think that it's the scarf. The bio says it's like he's a mysterious little boy character, and I just think that the scarf is really giving the greatest amount of mystery, but especially for a kitty character, I feel like it's pretty sharp and polished and sophisticated, not as whimsical, but I think they save the whimsy and like a little bit of the fun for more of the animal type characters. But anyway, then we have Palico, which is like the little companion animal creature. I don't usually like to cover these like animal non-humanoid creatures, but we have a whole ensemble going on and it's actually really cute. Overalls or like just kind of coveralls are typically very utilitarian, and given that its function is like to help with hunting and morale, it just seems like an overall cheerful little creature. And we have Olivia serving full boss lady vibes armor set. But I like that the armor doesn't completely dominate the outfit. We're still getting a really interesting like vest or top tunic. Love the fastening to it. I really would love to see a little bit more of those kind of items, despite some of the kind of classical time period look that they have to them. Really resurge and kind of penetrate our mainstream style consciousness. Her little Palico assistant creature, Athos or Athos, definitely gives a much more of attitude and kind of toughness than the other companion character. The overall outfit feels just a little bit more serious and a little bit more authoritative. So actually, in getting a closer look at Eric's outfit, I definitely like it better. Like I was saying with Alma, a very signature statement jacket that gives him cool silhouette, but a real overall kind of comfy, laid back, more introspective, knowledgeable vibe in contrast to the other characters. But there's just a little bit more going on underneath the jacket with like the layered shirts, a little bit more texture, more accessory, and just a little bit more rugged. And I definitely feel like that makes for a much more interesting and dynamic outfit composition. Werner, as another Smithy character, I would typically consider a little bit plain and boring, but I like what appears to be more of a more of a like vest, a stylish vest, but it's really just like the skirt element that he has going on, an element we've seen in this type of archetype or kind of character framework before, but I like the texture to it. I like the color. And then Fabius, killer statement jacket coat. I really like this one because I feel like it's made out of a creature or just a material or a texture that is really indicative of something more adventurous and hunter-esque. And I just like that it's a little bit more utility with the pouches, and then with the stitching element, it just has so much more charm and character to it, and I would definitely add a jacket like this to my wardrobe collection. And then there's Rove, and definitely giving the whole mage type fantasy, very mystical, also very mysterious. I don't believe there's magic in the game, like stereotypical magic. Would love to play the game if there was more of a character that was kind of like this and you could like actually cast spells. That might defeat a little bit of the purpose of like hunter-gatherer. But anyway, that was just the overall impression that I got from this wanderer type character. All right, now let's finally jump into these actual armor sets. Starting with the Hope set, and I believe that's essentially just like the default outfit. Love this actually just for what it is. It even seems like there's kind of like a cap, like casual baseball cap, sport cap type hat along with a hood. Great combination, easily brings us into something significantly more modern and contemporary. But then overall, the composition just feels so much more stylish. I mean, very fashionable, lots of great layers, lots of great accessories. In general, loving the tall boots, giving very much a rugged vibe without that heavy armor quite yet. I'm just not the fan of armored looks. And honestly, I would play my male character within the female set just because I love to show some leg. This leather set gives so much of a steampunk kind of vibe. I think it's really just the goggles. It's really just the goggles. Maybe also just like the leather texture. It just feels very industrial. And I think that that's what gives it the most character and charm. And I like in the female version, there's just more leg and body showing. Like there's shoulder, there's leg. I really just like a little bit more of the sprinkle in general of the female body confidence. And translated to men, I just feel like that just shows something a little bit more progressive, but doesn't feel always completely out of the realm, depending on the armor set, from what a man could comfortably step into. The bone set isn't too bad. It feels so much more tribal and so much more indigenous, for lack of a better way to describe it. Varying textures, something a little bit more menacing, but also just very resourceful, which I feel like they've been resourceful up until this point, but that this is just in another form or variety of it. Love the alternate version. Just so much more body confident and just feels a lot more along the lines of what I think an actual tribal man would wear, especially when we maybe look at history outside of the armored fantasy. The Vesboid armor set is very, very interesting. And this is where we get into something that is genuinely armored, but it takes on a different theme and concept, which I would imagine is based on a certain monster that you encounter. Loving the layered panels to all of the armor, as well as like the spiky stinger like elements. It feels like such a living, breathing, like bio armor situation. Loving the default color scheme as well. It's interesting. It feels smooth, sharp, round, rigid at the same time. Just some interesting kind of dual aesthetic components to it. So I kind of like the Kaku or Kuku armor set as well, for similar reasons, because there's those layered panels going on throughout the entire look. This one's just a lot more triangular and sharp. I like a little bit of the what seems like softer color palette and a little bit more belt decoration. I definitely like the female version better. It just, once again, doesn't feel as closed off. It's not as also dominated by those armored panels. It just feels like there's so much more balance between something that is a little bit more regular cloth outfit oriented with some of those armor pieces more as complements. The Chatacabra set, loving the overall reptilian pattern and design going on, and it almost feels like a reptile kind of skin alternative for Mortal Kombat. That's the immediate vibe, really, just with the kind of mask going on. I will say that the female or alternative version, once again, just gives us a little bit more of that like wrapped cloth in the front, just for a little extra accessorizing and decoration to further soften the look. And I like a little bit more of the kind of hooded or just kind of like shoulder neck framing that's going on in the upper body. And the headpiece is kind of cuter in this case. Absolutely adore the Cametris, I don't know how to say it, look. Oh my gosh, one of the strongest looks. It feels very Three Musketeers, but there's various different materials and textures going on. Just how the overall cloak or top just completely covers the upper body and just gives it such interesting framing as well as depth. The color palette is just so engaging. Plenty of gold mixed in just to make it feel like one of the most luxurious and opulent outfits in this entire collection. Love the style of the hat. The female or alternative version, I don't know what happened here. Definitely just took on much more of that kind of armored orientation. Love the kind of rounder puffy sleeves and like a little bit of like the kind of detail that's hanging off like with like the fringe or just off of the bottom or the trim of the top and jacket, but not the biggest fan. And love the Lala Barina one. Oh my gosh. I think it might actually be my top favorite. It's so good. Obviously love the hat, love the cloak off the shoulder, and just how it completely just frames one side of the entire body of the look. It's like a belted, long vested tunic, and just obviously with the ruffles, just giving so much fancy and sophistication. Easily would want to just take various aspects of this and pair it with other items that kind of give a little bit more of that fashion vibe, which is what these fashion hunters have done to just create such extravagant looks. And then looking at the female or alternate one with more of like a dress, absolutely. It's just the shape of it. It's almost feels very floral, just with all of the different kind of bunching and just the slight pleats going on. I don't know if I like the Conga one or not. I like aspects of it. I like kind of like the shoulder and the texture going on there. Hate the mask, like the belt work, and then like the boots. Really not the biggest fan of like the default masculine version of it, really at all. But the female version, in addition to just like the body confidence, I like how it's almost giving like a Predator vibe, just maybe with the headdress. That's about it. Love the Rompompolo one. I think it's a lot of the color scheme. The mask gives me like Plague Doctor energy, so a little bit more time period-esque, but just almost with like tendrils. Really, it's just the color scheme, but then we have those neutral, very strong belt and utility elements just to kind of help break it up, as well as just kind of really root us into something else. So I feel like there's some kind of difference in aesthetic play there, but really love the alternate female version as well. Just with how the upper body elements are framed, it almost feels like a quilted jacket, which is very current in fashion and something that I've absolutely seen on runways and just also accessible that people buy from a statement wear perspective. I kind of like the Gypseros one, really, because the shape is really unlike any armor kind of style that I've seen typically. It almost reminds me of Warhammer. I've taken glimpses at the suits there, and I feel like it's giving a bit of that energy. And the female version comes through and just like really shakes that up echoes a little bit and mirrors that really strong rounded silhouette and shape, but with so much more delicateness to it. Obviously, just with the organic skirt wear, feels much more practical fashion in that case, with the armor elements being more complementary. So I feel like that's an interesting reinterpretation. Love the hat. The Nursilla set feels very like Gundam mech suit oriented, very much so, giving that whole fantasy, like the whole thing screams it. And especially just with the color palette, like it feels nice in that regard because it feels like it brings us into something more technological and like in a whole new genre of aesthetic. So I really just like that. The shapes are just so much more dramatic and pronounced and exaggerated. While that might be kind of a little bit boring and blasé typically to me, it feels a little bit more refreshing in concert with all of the other looks that we've covered so far. The Hirabami style feels very traditional Chinese. It feels very Hanfu inspired, especially just with the hairstyle. I don't know if that's exactly what they were going for, but that's what I'm getting. Even though it follows something that we've seen before, it's once again refreshing for a different type of aesthetic and genre of fashion within the overall context of this game. And even especially just like with the hardware elements in there, not as armored, more luxurious accessory, which I feel like is a nice touch. And that's really more so the masculine version, but also the female version kind of follows that same angle. So there's actually really no difference there. So the Rothian armor, definitely the male version just kind of feels like whatever. We've seen this medieval, classic European, like really not giving me anything that I haven't seen before. So it's kind of whatever. But the female version I had to cover just because when they always enter like a skirt or like a dress kind of framework for it, I find that interesting, but especially with the large exaggerated armored elements, like wow, almost just feels like wings or just like large scales. It just feels so lethal, but also like couture fashion as well. I just thought that was really interesting. Really only looking at this ingot set because of the skirted elements with the fur trim. Just a nice, interesting textural play on the bottom versus the heavy armor everywhere else and in the upper body. I kind of like the Guardian Fulgur set, kind of. Really more so I think the female version of it because of just the body confidence, and it does balance once again the fur, the softer, delicate kind of tailed elements in the back with a lot of the armored pieces. So it's really just the fur cloak that I think is, and the fur texture on a number of the different pieces, that's really resonating with me. Looking at the Guardian Deshagama set, I thought that I initially liked the Deshagama set like as it was. There was just some coloring of the belt and buckle details that made it feel a little sloppy and a little bit all over the place. Just like pure belt and buckle, pure fur feather texture, whatever's happening in here. But then the Guardian one just feels a little bit more put together with some color variations within the belt and buckle decorations that permeate and adorn the overall ensemble. It just makes it feel a little bit more balanced and a little bit more tight and organized, for lack of a better way to put it. So loving how you can just kind of colorize various aspects to just give it something that feels a little bit more contained. The Azurakan set is obviously interesting because it just feels like there's just flames coming straight off of it. Feels like a flame deity or god of some sort. I really just like that. Also just like with the muscle details going on. Very well decorated in that regard, and obviously lends a very interesting shape to it. And that's really about it. I think that the female version just feels, and I love like the chains on the female version that hang from the back, and it just feels a little bit more like a practical outfit in comparison to the men's default, which feels heavily armored, but that's on par with what we've gotten so far. But just also love the height of the boots on this as well, and a little bit more of the swirly softerness of those flame extensions. The Guardian Ebony look is interesting. It feels a little bit more feral, more wolf or canine oriented. The tassels are a nice touch. So it almost feels like mystical Frostfire Spirit Wolf situation. That's the biggest kind of vibe I'm getting off of this. Feels a little like something I feel like I've seen plenty of times. So I'm not like blown away innovation, but it's well put together and nicely patterned. Absolutely love the shoe design. Like, it's just giving something so much more Middle Eastern. I always want to say Mediterranean with regard to this look, but that's probably not entirely accurate. But I just really love the scarf. It looks like a turban. I could be wrong, but especially just like the gold hardware, kind of like dangly, more delicate details that are really great balanced circular shape to some of the kind of more striped fabric design. Just excellent layering, great belt work as always. Really loving this design, and especially in the female version with more of like the braided skirt-like elements. Whoa, that is so strong. The one thing that I wanted to say about the Rathalos look is that it reminds me of like a Daedric creature from Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Just with like the texture, the scaly texture, the black sharp horn spike details. It literally reminds me of like one of those creatures that you could summon or you would find in one of the Oblivion gates. This Gravios one is also very interesting, just based on not only the layered panels of the armor, but just the roundedness once again. I don't know, I think if I'm gonna get into some armor, I just need maybe the roundedness. Clearly I'm finding an affinity within that overall style, and like the more porous hole details coming from it, like that also adds something a little bit different, something a little bit kind of what is that, but at the same time it kind of intrigues me and brings it a little bit out of the norm. Love the Blongo design. So soft, feels like amongst the most coziest set of looks, and just with how the fabric drapes. Like, I love a well draped fabric around the legs, as well as just a little bit more of the belted cloth details going on. Really interesting. The male version's a little bit more elaborate, but not necessarily in a way that I like. The female version's just a little bit more clean. Once again, like, I would probably opt for combinations from the female set before anything else, but I love how the men's version had a little bit more of that purple fabric, or just more fabric draping over the pants. Kind of digging the commission set. It's really the cloak and a little bit of the headwear that I'm just like, I can get into this. That makes it feel a little bit more fashion, a little bit more practical, wearable, within range of what I could maybe want to integrate within my wardrobe. The rest of it feels like things I've very much seen, heavily belt and buckle, even corset oriented, which just feels a little like something I've seen before, especially within this kind of genre of game. But it does contribute overall to a functional aesthetic that I think is far leaps and bounds more functional than a lot of the armored looks we've gotten up until this point, which is why I wanted to highlight it. Love the Kunafa set. Like, it's so funky. It's so funky, groovy. I love it. So much great texture, like upper body, lower body. Seems like so many different great ways you could colorize this. I'm loving the different color between the fur or feathers or whatever's happening between the upper body and the lower body. Even like a horned headdress detail, I'm not usually the biggest fan, but somehow it just feels so well complemented by just like the head wrap piece that's really more so surrounding the head, as well as the bone elements sprinkled throughout. Love the Silled set. So cozy. Oh, I just love the hooded, soft hooded element. It's really just like it just really adds a whole new dimension and layer to this look. The death stench is kind of intense. There's a lot going on here. It feels very like Death Knight oriented, a little bit more just like dark mage actually, which I kind of dig. Kind of almost like Sith-like. Love the female version. Love the cloak. The cloak is just so much better in the female version. Just so much better. Like, not only just the body confidence in the silhouette, but just like the headdress detail is really giving in here. Love the butterfly set. Like, it's just so, it has that sleekness that I've been saying that I kind of appreciate in the female versions, but also in the male version. And there's just like these little kind of like antennas peeking up at the top. It just feels overall like there's a great movement down in a flowy, easy breezy way. I always love to use easy breezy. I'm sure people are tired of hearing that, but like it's true. Although the female version just has so much more highlight with the color, and also in this case a much more genuine silhouette that's true to butterflies, especially just with the skirt of the overall garment. This king beetle look is very true to the name, absolutely giving beetle, almost like Heracross from Pokemon, just in like human form. I feel like there was also like a Transformers like Animorphs kind of figurines back in the day that had like a beetle form, and I feel like this is kind of aligning with that overall idea. I mean, both shapes and alternative looks are great, and really just paying it off. I think I like this battle one. I think I like it. Again, the men's just feels a bit intense. It almost feels a little overboard, but the female version just feels so much more accessible. It doesn't even feel female version. It just feels much more casual, but it's giving like a strong Western vibe. Really loving a lot of the cross-stitch details to it. Love this Melohola look. Like anything with those kind of rounder elements to it that feel a little bit of kind of like almost flower petal, really into it. Or something like a wing or just like a softer material, love it. Loving the color scheme, would go crazy with the color variations here, mix and match. Whoa, the female version, I don't know about that one. Not flattering on the character very much at all, like especially in this case. And the male version happens to be so much stronger. Whoa, I was not expecting that. So even though I know that you can change the colors of the armor sets, really highlighting the Damascus one because it kind of reminds me of the Fate anime series. I don't know where that came from, but it's really the color of it and the gold detailing. It just feels so legitimate. Like it just feels so serious and boss mode. I just can't even describe it any other way, but it just really stood out to me in that regard. I'm kind of digging the Dahad one because of those extended elements that are coming out. Once again, the gold detailing is great. It's almost giving me a little bit of like, for the female version especially, like Valkyrie kind of like style, but just maybe less of the like actual wings, more of just like metal extensions. Almost feels like a kind of Greek mythological style. And I really just love the strong statement belt, especially in the female version. The Uth Duna one has some great draping in the lower body, and just like even the headdress, I would have to say on the male version is quite statement, and the colors really complement each other, especially for a default look. The female version feels a little more festival, a little more carnival, just as a lot more native tribal kind of situation. Almost don't like the extremes in the body confidence in this case. It kind of would have liked something just as mystical and graceful on the female version, to be honest. I just really think that was really strong in the male version. The Gore armor set, really it's the luminescence, the glowy components to it, or if that's just like a neon, it's radiating very nicely against the rest of it. Kind of also like a little bit of the cloth integrated and mixed in with the armor, but it's really just how great that color glow is. Whether that diminishes if you color customize it or not, I don't know, but it's cool. And love the arc veld look. Just so overall full texture, hair, fur moment. Just really great work here. I mean, there's not much more to say. It's completely dominating it. The braids, the flow, the overall coverage definitely feels like a genuine animal being, or monster, whatever, being worn. But especially the female version, just because you get a little bit of peak of skin amongst all of that. Whoa, but the Guardian version is even more wow. Like, just, it's really color. Like, I could see how playing with colors in this regard really transforms the look and just brings it into something completely different and new and engaging. Love the Guild Knight look. That long tail vest top situation, perfection. The hat is consistently carrying and slaying, but this is like, would be a super strong go-to for me. I would definitely take various pieces like this and mix it with so much other stuff, like super slay. I now finally understand the hype behind the fashion in this Monster Hunters series, particularly this installment. I hope you enjoyed walking through these with me. Let me know what your favorite armor set is or what your favorite outfit combinations are. But of course, until the next video, I'll talk to you later.